Hi guys, good morning. Hope you're having a fabulous day at Clancy as usual. Just wanted to give you a little bit of a lecture about the speech and the difference between an essay and a speech in my absence, because I think that the speech characteristics sheet on its own might get a little bit confusing. So I've also drawn you up an example. If you're looking at both of these sheets, that means that you found it on the Peltries, and it also means you've directed people who were away yesterday to find the sample paragraph on the Peltry as well. So thank you to those people who have been diligent and done that. Okay, so let's talk about speech characteristics and how you now need to take this essay that we were writing yesterday, so I'll refer to that in a minute, and turn it into a speech. So you should have both things up in front of you. I'm going to talk you through what each of these 7 things are that you can see, and how I've used them over here. The sample that you should have up in front of you now also has the comments for the markup, so you can't see those on my screen, but when I stretch it open you have the same thing that I have. So I'll just close that back up. Okay, so a hook is used to establish rapport with the audience. A hook can be a lot of things. A hook can be a bit of a joke. It can be a single word like I've used. It needs to be something that gets the audience attention and also establishes some kind of rapport with them. It doesn't need to be a joke. It probably should be completely related to what you're talking about, and I would avoid overgeneralizing belonging is and belonging is not. I don't know about you, but I can't say that I've ever been roused to be engaged in something by giving me a definition of it. So you need to think about what would get you interested in somebody's speech. It might be saying something incredibly outrageous. It might be actually stating the opposite of what you're trying to do to kind of engage them in a bit of an argument. Not verbally, of course, just mentally. But very rarely are you ever going to get your audience to care about what you're doing by just giving me a definition or giving me generals like, belonging can be affected by many things. There are many factors that affect one's sense of belonging. Straight away, I just don't care about what you have to say next. So think about a hook, something short, snappy, to the point that leads us in. I've actually used a kind of couple hooks here. So in the paragraph that I've given you at my speech, it goes a bit like this. Paradox. Defined as two things that coexist and seemingly impossible, and yet completely real. Belonging is one such paradox. It is indeed as much about where you fit in as where you don't that defines where you belong. It's kind of like needing the darkness to know the light, or having to grow up to appreciate childhood. So you can see how my immediate introduction is chatty, it's engaging, I'm trying to use metaphors, I'm using very simplistic language, but I've also got a very complex idea. I've started with the word paradox, I've not started with belonging is, so find a hook. Straight away you can see I'm using rhetorical devices as well, so it's like needing the darkness. I've given you an analogy or a simile there, so that's really important. I've also immediately started to use that idea of listing. Okay, so I've only given one thing, which is paradox, but you can see that I've broken that down, and that's a nice short sentence. That's also quite persuasive or quite rhetoric as well. Direct address, I've also used the word you straight away in it, so you can see I'm addressing someone. So that's that second point there. Range of rhetorical devices, and they should appear throughout. You'll notice my paragraph, that's just my introduction, but down in my paragraph you'll also notice I actually start with the quote and make a joke as well. It's very lame, and I'm sure you don't not laughed at my joke, but I kind of think it's cute, you know. Hath not old custom made this life more sweet? Look, that a typo. Look how. See, yours won't have the typo. Hath not old custom made this life more sweet than that of painted pomp? Well, hath it? This is a metaphorical question presented by Duke Senior. So you've got little opportunities there to do engaging things without dumbing down what it is you're talking about. Making things really interesting for people doesn't mean making them simple. It doesn't mean making them really general. It doesn't mean losing the flavour. It actually means adding flavour to kind of create interest in what it is that you're talking about. The whole text should be broken down into subsections for ease of transition and clarity for your audience. You'll notice the boxes I've used as introduction and first paragraph. I would continue to use boxes that engage me in what part of my speech I'm up to. I might not call it first paragraph. I might call it most important point, second point, pause, those kinds of things. Think of it more like song lyrics. You know, do you have kind of a team line or a chorus? Do you have a couple of verses, etc. So break it up into sections so visually when you're reading it on your palm cards, you've got a kind of idea of where you're up to in your speech. So when you flip that palm card and it says, final point, make it strong, you know that this is kind of the downhill run. So that's a really good tip. You should treat it like a script. So I've also included up here stage cues. When you're nervous, all the blood kind of rushes out of the logical thinking and creativity part of your brain and goes into your fight and flight response, which means that your prerogative when you're up there on stage in front of people with a teacher marking you, your prerogative is to panic and your prerogative is to get out of there as fast as possible, which is not great for your mark. And you guys, you're advanced. You should be able to knock this over. Most of you are incredibly confident individuals, so I wouldn't say that this will be a major issue, but boys in particular, and I'm not trying to be sexist, but they tend to try and rush through speeches to avoid this kind of, stereotype or stigma that goes with kind of caring about English, which is always ironic because most of the authors that were ever published, even today, and pretty much all the way up until the 20th century were male. So English is an incredibly masculine field. Most of your politicians are men. They're making speeches. I always find it really strange that men aren't better at speech making when I watch them do it in high school. You guys should nail this. So that's kind of advice for you. Add some stage directions because it really forces you to think about that you're delivering this orally. It's a script, it's not an essay. It's a script, it's not an essay. I'm doing a monologue or I'm doing a drama performance. I'm not doing an essay. You're in front of people. Absolutely, people who do political speeches would have palm cards about what to do with their hands. Have any of you seen Talladega Nights? One of my favourite scenes is watching Ricky Bobby try and do a two-camera cue about a product, and he doesn't know what to do with his hands. He just keeps moving his hands in front of his face. Hilarious, right? And that's what you guys kind of do, but without putting your hands in your face, you tend to shove them in pockets or things like that. So I've got here, pause, look at 3 people, nice specific stage directions. Point to somebody when I say the word you. Hold up hands like scales to show 2 texts. You'll notice it doesn't just say gesture, things like that. I've actually been really specific. So treat it like a script, write down what you're actually going to do. You need to sacrifice high register for clarity. You can do this by ghosting. You notice that in the paragraph in particular, I've not sacrificed technique or level. I've said this is a metaphorical question presented by Duke Sr. upon his eviction from court life into the approximate intertextual equivalent of the Garden of Eden. He and his followers likened to Robin Hood. You can see my language is still quite high, but there's a lot more clarity in it. That is because I'm actually steering away from nominalization in a speech. A speech is verbal, it's driven by verbs, so it's okay for you to use nice, quirky, useful verbs. Steer away too much from that kind of nominalization we've been actually practicing in our writing. You can kind of give that up a bit. So that's why this speech is a bit easier than starting with an essay anyway. Decide on a theme or a statement that binds your whole speech together and ensure it's embedded throughout. I'm really putting together the idea of the paradox. That's the thing I like. The question didn't have paradox. I have referred to the question, but I really want to drive home that idea about paradox all the time. So obviously that's going to be the evidence I choose, the statements I come back to, and the things that I want to show are obviously going to constantly refer back to this idea of a paradox. So you should have a clear theme. Thematic basically means the same type of things appearing throughout your paragraph. So even if you've got a couple of different paragraphs, you still want to go back and think, well, what is the connecting idea that connects them? And some people actually create a conceit. A conceit means like an artificial thing to make this happen. You might decide, for example, to talk about your speech as a roller coaster, or talk about your speech as a book, or talk about your speech as the seasons, and you kind of use this quirky device to sort of say, summer, the beginnings of things. Let's talk about the beginnings of things. You might sort of say, chapter 1, this is where, or chapters are a bit dangerous, I suppose, because you're trying not to talk about books. But you get my idea. You can create that. Finally, and this is something I would like you all to do, and I'm going to actually demand that you do it next week when I'm back. I'm going to get you all to rehearse in front of a camera. So our lesson, probably on Monday, I would say, I'm actually going to get you all to stand in front of a camera and perform your introduction to a camera to watch what you do and how you do it. And then you're going to give that to me so I can see what it is you're doing, because it's very hard for you to pick up on things that you're getting wrong. And even right now, I can hear myself making mistakes because I'm aware that I'm recording it. And no matter how much I was thinking about writing this or looking at all the things I've given to you, now that I'm saying it aloud, which is very much like a speech, I'm seeing my hands moving in a certain way. I'm seeing that if I was recording this, I'm only moving my right hand for some random reason, and you can't see that, but I can see that happening. So until you actually talk aloud, and no one's home right now around me, but I still feel weird, and you're going to feel weird, and you just need to get over it. You have to talk aloud. If you don't talk aloud, you don't know what your voice sounds like. You get really shocked by your voice. You're not used to your voice sounding really serious. I know teachers who have a teaching voice and teachers who have a talking voice, and I find that really quirky and cute. You might have a speech voice, so you need to be doing this aloud. You need to be doing it over and over in front of a camera. Try out different expressions. These pretzels are making me thirsty. It's the Seinfeld thing. Try out, see what it sounds like. I think that's all I'm going to suggest to you. From here on in, you need to now go through your essay and start actually thinking, okay, I'm going to keep a lot of that really high-end stuff, but how can I add in all of this stuff? And again, I'm not expecting it to be perfect. The benefit you have is writing a speech is actually a lot less demanding than writing an essay. So I'm actually asking you to ease up at this point. This is going to be sliding on into home base. You've done the hard yards writing this really difficult Shakespeare essay that's synthesizing and nominalizing and all these hard things. And now I'm saying, okay, forget all of that and just make it personable. So hopefully you guys can go off and do that and do it well. And I'll see you soon. Good luck.